High performance is high output, undetermined pace, meaning the pace is not necessary, and high output, unsustainable pace compared to others. And then optimal performance is high output, we don't sacrifice results, high output at a sustainable pace compared to oneself.
Hey, Uncommon Leaders, welcome back. This is the Uncommon Leader Podcast. I'm your host, John Gallagher. I've got a great guest for you today. I've already had some conversation with him that should have been recorded and made it a part of the episode right off the bat, and you never know, it may end up in there as well. But Matt Granados is my guest slash victim, even as we sit through this, and he said, ask whatever is in here. But let me tell you a little bit about him first and how the two of us ultimately got connected and why he's going to be a great guest for you to listen to on the podcast. He's the founder and CEO of LifePulse Incorporated. He's a two-time #1 international best-selling author, and we'll talk about both of his books a little bit today. He's a mastermind behind a system ultimately that's been used by organizations up to and including Google and the U.S. Air Force. You know, the other thing we're going to talk about today is a little bit about what happens in Matt's life as well. He's the co-founder with his wife of the Take Part Foundation. We're going to learn a little bit more about that and how that's had an impact on him in terms of who he is as well. And ultimately, we're going to challenge some of the main paradigms of leadership that you really need to listen into. He argues things like hustle culture is actually a bad thing and a system of bad design. That motivation isn't missing. It's just that you never built it into the system. That ultimately the goal isn't high performance, but optimal performance. And so, Matt Granados, welcome to the Uncommon Leader Podcast. How are you doing today, friend?
John, I am so excited to be here. And one thing with that great introduction you have, anytime I get a conversation with someone beforehand and I know we're going to enjoy this podcast, I always like the listeners to know that we're going to hit some stuff that's going to probably offend them pretty quickly. It's going to get them to think, but we're also going to give them solutions. We don't bring truth without bringing support because it's hard. So what we'll do is if you stick around, you'll hear the different topics we talk about, whatever comes up, because I have no clue what's going to come up, but you're going to see me taking notes. And what we'll do is we'll add any of the resources that I bring up on here onto a special URL. We'll just do lifepulseinc.com /uncommon leader. And if you type that link in, by the time this is published, we will have whatever resources we've talked about, plus some free ones on there for you to kind of dive in and take what we do and actually put it into practice. So John, I'm excited to be here, man. The gloves are off. There are no rules. Whatever you want to talk about, we're going to make happen. So thanks for having me. Let's drop the gloves right off the bat and challenge this first paradigm that you often talk about. As leaders, well, obviously, one of our first steps is develop ourselves, but then we have a team to develop, which is people. You say we don't have people problems. Many leaders would say we do have people problems. What do you mean we don't have people problems? Tell me more. Yeah. So if you're focusing on your people problems and you're ending it right there, you're focusing on something you'll never be able to correct. So here's what I have found. And I have to bring it back to where I found it. We were out at Google headquarters working with their team, and they brought us in for work life. That was very strange for me because Google is the one who created all of that, right? Like the culture, I mean, they have 5-star restaurants, you name it. And we're having a conversation and I'm asking them, hey, like what's stopping us from accomplishing what we're trying to do here? And they kept bringing it up. And what I realized was, wait a minute, the people aren't the problem. People have problems. And that's why we feel we have people problems. It's not the people that are the problems. It's the people's problems that are the problems. And what we do wrong is we don't sit there and help equip our people to solve their own problem. And we've lost the concept of uncommon leadership is really just because leadership is uncommon, like true leadership. We've changed leadership, or which then kind of goes towards management, but then it even goes even worse because going from leadership to management, in my opinion, is downgrading what you're doing, right? So there's nothing against managers. I told you we defend people pretty quick. I didn't know it was going to be that fast, but we got it right away. So you got the leadership down to management, but then the majority of people who are managing in 2025, 2026 are not actually managing, they're babysitting. They are making sure their people do their job. That is not what management is. What management is ensuring the people have the ability to get their job. Managers need to make sure things are where they need to be so that employee A, B, C, and D can do the job. So all that being said, our desire when we work with individuals, whether it's our executive coaching, whether we're doing team training, whether we're doing our group community coaching, it doesn't matter, is that we want to properly equip people to bridge the gap back to the company, the team, the desired outcome. Too many times we've been lied to by the self-growth world, by the consulting world, which is me, right? So I'm part of this. And we've been told, hey, you just need to cater to your people's needs. That is not equipping, that is enabling.
Yes, it is.
Enabling is not part of leadership. It is a disaster. Equipping is. And with all that, it makes it not easy and not pleasant all the time, but it is profitable. So people aren't your problem. People have problems. That's why you have people problems. You want to stop having people problems? Start helping your people deal with their problems. Doing the job's not the hard part. It's doing the job while you're still experiencing all the hardship of life. That's the hard part.
Yeah, too many times, and I've heard this before, kind of the old, check your problems at the door when you come in. That's not how human beings operate. We know what exists inside that space. And I love the word equipping them, right? I mean, that uncommon leader absolutely equips, does not enable. And then I throw on top of that, inspire and encourage as well. They're there to create that environment. You mentioned the Google environment. So I want to know, you've been in there. I'm not even in the headquarters. All I know is the movie with Vince Vaughn. All I know is, do they have pudding or do they have sleep pods?
They have all of it. It's amazing. What they've done is absolutely amazing. One thing you just said, though, which was really, really interesting, because I've never thought about this till you just said it, was you said that, we want people to check the problems at the door. We want people to not just keep your human side at the door and just come and do the business job. And I think that used to work when their job was to pick stuff off conveyor belts and move it to a new conveyor belt. I think that used to work when you go to get an MBA because we needed people who could do more than just run the conveyor belt. We needed someone who could help make sure the conveyor belts run. So you got to learn a little bit more so you can manage these, what would be seen as almost like robots. That's what humans were thought of, right? They come in, they do their job, check the card, get out. So you said something interesting. It's like, I want you to check your problems at the door. But then what we do is then we go, but I want you to bring the creative side of being a human and the ownership mentality of being a human and the change management side of being a human and the adaptability side of being a human. Yeah. So John, don't bring your problems, but bring everything else that is human about you, but don't bring that stuff here. It doesn't work that way. It could, if you wanted your people to be close to robots as possible, the way employees were looked at in the Industrial Revolution, in that concept. But unfortunately, in 2025, 2026, and so forth, the humans aren't the robots. We actually have robots. So the value of our people now and into the future is the wholeness of the human. That includes the problems.
Amen. Oof. I think about that, and I think, what came to my mind as you said that is that, we're most ready to help the person we once were, right? You're a consultant now, and you're teaching many of these different things that exist. There's got to be a story from your past that ultimately kind of informed how you were, maybe even as a child. What were some of those things that may have influenced you to have the leadership style that you have today? Oh,
well, first off, school was always hard for me. So I always had to adapt. Like when I would learn something, and I didn't know this was strange or valuable till later, but strange till more recent, was I need to learn something and then I need to take what John says. And in order for me to comprehend it, I have to think about how I would implement it. And then I have to kind of create a system about how I would implement it. So when I read Think and Grow Rich, I had to go through every single chapter and go, how do I implement what Napoleon Hill's talking about? And what I didn't realize was this concept that we now call learning with implementation in mind. We actually teach people how to do this, and that it's the best way to experience knowledge is to learn with implementation in mind. I didn't realize how unusual that was. So every time I would learn something, every time I would read a book, I had to create a system to implement what it is they taught me to do. Otherwise, why am I reading it? If I have knowledge, not willing to implement it, what's the point of it? It didn't make sense to me. So I started creating a system around almost every single thing that I had to do, because that's just how I'm not theoretically intelligent enough to be able to take it, comprehend it, and do something with it. I have to put it into practice. So all that being said, when I grew up in school, there was learning development issues. It was every acronym you could put behind your name, ADD, ADHD, you name it. Then what I started realizing is the more of these tags that I collect, the less restraints I have in school, the less trouble I get in. It's almost like I got out of jail for free because, he's just has that problem going on. So I knocked those tests out so well. And as I developed and grew into the entrepreneurial side, where it's really all about adaptability. Turns out in life, it's all about adaptability. How well can you adapt to whatever is being thrown our way? I've always had to do it. I just didn't realize that wasn't normal. So my inability, my learning disability is what forced me to adapt in a way that I didn't know was needed, that allowed me to experience the entrepreneurial journey, where all it is creative problem solving all day long. And that's what came to. So that's how the practices came into play. Now, how did the system come into play? In 2015, 14, I think. I always get the date wrong. And then Maria yells at me, my wife, not in a bad way, but because I should know these things. Sometime long, long ago, right? We'll put it that way. I thought everything was going really well. And in about a 30-day period, I found out that employees were embezzling from me about $250,000. I found out that my health was terribly off track. Like I wasn't going to probably make it past 40 at that time. And I was in my 20s. I found out that, I was spiritually, I was completely dead. There was no time for that. I was too busy working, too busy making money. Now I had this multi-million-dollar business in my early 20s that everyone loved to ask me about and I loved talking about. And then my fiance and I were leaving for Greece. And the day before we left for Greece, she gave me the ring back and said, I can't do this anymore. So in 30 days, everything of mine was flipped upside down and I was the last to know about it. So I sat there and I was like, how do I make this happen? Prior to that, I wasn't a believer. In the middle of those 30 days is where I found Jesus. And then as I was going through, I was going, what do I do? I have no relationship with this guy I don't even know, can't see, but seems to work when I go to talk with him and listen to the teachings that he has in this book that I've never read before. So where do I start? What do I do? And it was just make it to Sunday. Just make it 1 week. If you can make it a week, you'll be good. And I started living my life 1 week at a time. And that's what created the LP, which is the planning system. When I met Maria and she and I decided to get married, she said, Matt, I knew marrying you was going to be hard, but I didn't realize it was going to be this hard. Like, you're insane. So like, how do you process yourself so I can help support what you're trying to do, right? It's the nicest thing and the most womanly thing I think any wife could say was, hey, how do I make this work with you? Like that takes a lot of leadership and confidence and just strength in her. I said, well, there's these 9 questions I ask myself every single week. Here's what they are. And she's like, yeah, this is ugly. Can I make it look nice? She went and made it look nice, went and got it printed. And her and I started using this weekly planning system together. And I was amazed at how disconnected I was with her. She's the one person in my life that we should be one. And I don't even know what she wants to do this week. I thought I knew what she wanted to do. So I'm now serving her as a husband the way I think she wants to be provided for. And then I find out that's not how she wants to be provided for. So when I finally said, wait, I don't really know you as well as I should. I wonder who else I don't know. So I brought it to my assistant and I brought it to our sales director and our sales team and our warehouse team. And I started giving everyone these little planners. And I went, holy smokes, I don't know anybody in my life. Like I have this false sense of Matt's truth and I'm letting everything else come through that filter, which is an absolute disaster because my truth 9 times out of 10 is completely wrong. Now, what I wasn't expecting was a group of entrepreneurs asked if I would come in and teach our system because they saw the success we were having. And they were like, yeah, I was like, sure. I was like, I don't really know how to do this. They're like, well, how much time do you need? I'm like, I don't know. Give me 3 hours. I'm sure I'll figure something out in 3 hours, right? We'll do a workshop and that way I could, I'm bound to say something good in 3 hours. Well, we did the workshop and it was a huge success. Someone grabbed the book that we presented there, the 9 questions, the LP, offered it over to a large financial institution, one of Fortune 100s. And they called me and said, hey, can we reach out? We found a copy of this planner. It solves our biggest personnel problems. Can you come teach us? And I said, absolutely. I'd love to, right? Small entrepreneur, going to do best practice, sharing with the big boys. Any entrepreneur would love to do this if they believe in what they're doing. Now, I had other businesses. I didn't have LifePulse. It didn't exist at this point. I show up. I have the conversation. They say, all right, that's great. Thank you. Really appreciate it. And then as we were leaving, they're like, why didn't you invoice us? And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, we thought, like, is there a consultancy behind this? And I was like, no. And they're like, oh, there should be. I said, well, what do you mean by that? I said, I didn't even know what the problem they were solving at that point. I was just sharing what we do. And they said, we can't connect our corporate desire metrics with our individuals' desired lifestyles. Your system does just this. That was 2017. So I said, that's interesting. I know that date's accurate. I said, is this a problem that everyone has? They said, everyone of our size has this problem. And they said, within the next 10 years, every business is going to have this problem. We used to solve it by just stroking a check and then go away. They said, it doesn't work like that anymore. I said, that's interesting. So then obviously 2 years go by, 2018, 2019, and 2020, and COVID hits. And that's when our system blew up because no one knew what to do. And everyone lost the rhythm and structure. And what our system does is it offers structure, which brings freedom, and rhythm, which brings peace. And we were able to come in with these large organizations, Twitter, Air Force, Google, these big organizations, and help them through this concept of what do we do next? And that's how LifePulse started, all by accident, all because of a learning disability from early in the ages.
And as we know with our faith, it wasn't an accident that it happened that way, but it was just the perfect timing that it was supposed to. All right, Amen. We don't have time to ask all 9 questions. Secondly, I don't frankly want you to give it away. I want them to get in touch with you about what these 9 questions are, but give me the first one. What's the first question?
I'll
And
give you
that's helping folks get started.
I'll give you the first three. Okay.
Okay.
And here's the reason why, right? We talked about the two books. There's the intentional week or the ideal week, right? I helped you out with that.
Yeah.
The intentional week or the ideal week, as you call it, but the book's called The Intentional Week. And then the other book is called Motivate the Unmotivated. These three questions are the first three questions of the LP, but if you use them, you can motivate anybody in your life. Okay. So number one, this week, it's all based on the week. What are you focused on? Number two, what are you grateful for? Number three, what are you working towards this week, right? What are the goals you're going after this week, right? These are just the first three questions out of the 9. And what I found is if you ask it for 4 cycles, once a month, once a week, Monday, 4 weekly back-to-back cycles, you're going to start seeing trends amongst your people. So when they answer a question a little off kilter, that's when, as an uncommon leader, you can go in and lead where leadership is needed. One of the hardest things about a leader is knowing when it's time to lead and when it's time to let go. So if you're not asking questions, you are never going to guess this right, not on a consistent basis, not in a sustainable way. So what are you focused on? What are you grateful for? What are you working towards? And if I ask that question, John, and you answer this way, this way, this way, this way, then on week 5, 6, 7, you answer with a very strange answer, I might come to you and go, hey, John, what's going on, man?
Yeah,
If John, if you're about to, go get married next week and your one word focus is marriage, that's exciting. I'm excited about that. I also don't think your head's going to fully be in the game this week with that big deal and that big presentation you have on Friday. So, hey, I just want to touch base. Like, you got that? Are you good? Because you're getting married on Saturday and you have a huge presentation on Friday. Is that a good idea? But if John's been married for 20 years and he says marriage, but not in a happy voice, you might want to have a conversation with John because likely there's something wrong with his marriage. Same word, different context. Uncommon leaders know what to listen for. You listen for trends, not answers.
Well, I think it's so good because we know that those uncommon leaders ask great questions. They're not telling folks. I'll often say, don't be a shithead. You should do this, you should do that, or whatever that means.
I love it.
You've got to learn how to ask the right questions. And when you get a question that is peculiar, it's not correcting them, but it's literally, as you said, tell me more about what that says, because there's something there that's a little bit different than what you responded. The other thing I love about it, and I know, talking about system and how you drive your wife crazy with systems and frameworks and structures and all those different things, is that it is the same 3 questions all the time. Like there's a rigor back to the intentional week or the ideal week. There's a rigor to saying I'm going to ask the same 3 questions all the time because I can tell then when there's variation. I can tell when something is starting to go haywire. If I'm always asking different questions, I can't identify those trends. I can't identify the outlier that says something different is going on right now. So important, so good. And again, 9 questions are 9 questions. Those 3 questions get them started off really well. And I want to make sure that we provide folks the opportunity at the end to chat with you about how they can get in touch with you and learn the other questions.
Yeah, and we'll put that will be one of the ones we'll put on. I'm just making a note of it. We'll put that on the website that we talked about, the / uncommon leader.
Excellent. The other thing that going back a little bit even to childish stories that I read it was the introduction to your book, Motivate the Unmotivated. I often think the intros and the conclusions or acknowledgments are some of the most powerful parts of the books. Right. But you mentioned this Eagle You and how it made a significant impact on you. What was Eagle You and what did that do for you as a young man and ultimately in your leadership journey?
Yeah, so Eagle U is a youth development program. It's still around too, right? So eagleuniversity.org. You can check it out. It's fantastic. Eagle U, the best way to describe it is it gives students 15 to 24 a 7-year career head start. Basically what happens is if you take the math, you go to actually, you take 4 years to guess a major is how the world has told us. And then you take another 3 years to figure out whether you were right or wrong with that guess. That's the 7 years of graduating high school to 3 years out of college. And holy smokes, I hate being a veterinarian. That's an expensive thing to realize. What we want to do is get that going at a younger age. So bring them in at 15 to 24, walk them through all the things you wish you knew now, right? How do you bring the concept of mentorship, of goal setting, of understanding how to have interpersonal skills, how to communicate effectively with people, how to go find a mentor, how to how to nurture a relationship with a mentor, how to lead a mentor relationship as the mentee, not as a mentor, right? All the things that to me, it made a lot of sense because remember, I had to create systems on how to do what to do. And then I went to Eagle U and the systems were there. So a lot of the stuff that we actually teach at LifePulse, I have to credit to Eagle U because it came from that mindset. Now, with all that being said, it was probably the most pivotal part of my journey of learning that at such a young age, because I got a chance to experience it when I didn't have the risk of it not working as a concern. Does that make sense? So working with youth at a younger age, introducing people to truth as early as possible, I think is so vital. We wait till they're adults. And what's an adult mean in this world, right? An adult, well, 18, well, technically 26. No, actually, what I define an adult is the second you have responsibility to others. I don't care how old you are. Okay. But if you are a 13-year-old boy and your dad passes away, I'm sorry, but you're now an adult. There is now a responsibility to others. My son, Zig is 6 years old right now. Zig has had to act like an adult since he was about 3 or 4 because my daughter, Natalie, who's 8 years old, has an extremely rare medical condition, extremely rare genetic mutation, which put her in a wheelchair. Her physical body doesn't work the way that we would like it to. She's an absolute blessing, mentally 110% there, but she's in a wheelchair. So because of that, Zig, the second he could walk, and then we had another little buddy named Teddy, so his little brother who's 2, Zig would go through, and this is why he's so powerful and so strong. He'd be picking up a passy and an iPad all while he's helping the dog get out. When we would have to call 911, and the fire department would come, my wife would get the baby, I would be with Natalie, and Zig would open the door. He's part of the leadership team in our family at 4. And you sit there and go, oh, that's so unfair for him. No, I'm not saying it's necessarily fair, but that's the F word that you're not allowed to use in our house. Fair is not something that we focus on in our house at all. It is a disastrous word to focus on and a disastrous word to teach your kids and let your kids use that as a reason. So Ziggy at 4, he is part of the leadership team in our family. Now, as our kids develop, they're all part of the leadership team because they're all part of the family unit. Like, I don't care if Teddy's 2, he still has responsibilities. That's the biggest mistake I think we're running into is we're not bringing truth to kids as young as possible. And then we're trying to counter lies that have already been anchored in their head with truths going, no, that's not true. This is true. Well, which one's true? How do I know which one's true? Every single study shows the one that's anchored in first is the one that has the best chance to stay. So you want to wait till it's a comfortable time to have a conversation with your kid, with your team, with that employee of yours who's not working out the way it is. Whatever hits first anchors in deeper, and it's a higher likelihood that that's the truth they accept as real.
Oh, man. That is so good. Again, going all the way back to that definition of adult is when you have responsibility for something. I mean, you think about that. The first thing they hear has the best chance at sticking. I mean, folks, just rewinding and listening to that, knowing, Matt, ultimately what, again, the challenge and the blessing that it's been with your daughter as you've gone through that, he's had to mature and take on responsibility younger in terms of those things. And I just think that's really cool. And as you even correlate that to leadership challenges that we face today, that if we leave a poor performer on their own for too long, someone else is going to get to them and say, it's okay to be mediocre.
It is it's so unbelievably selfish. And this is what I tell everyone. I don't care if you're a leader or a Christian. This goes to the Christian walk too. If you're afraid to share your faith with someone, that would be like letting them walk into hell and going, I don't want to offend them, so I'm going to let them go. Like, what? Like, the sacrificial love that we're to show everybody as an uncommon leader is, hey, John, this is really uncomfortable, but I care enough about you that we're going to say this. One thing we teach is making sure you're not confusing nice with kind as an uncommon leader. Yeah. Right? Nice, like, we're all called to be kind. No one's called to be nice. That is not a calling of human. Nice people will not tell me my fly's down. Kind people will come up to me and go, hey, dude, your fly's down. That's kindness. It's uncomfortable. It's awkward for everybody. But that type of understanding as a leader is what will differentiate you from the manager and the babysitter that we talked about before that we all fall trapped to. And it's really sad that the uncommon leader is literally, in today's world, the status quo bar has dropped so low is it's just a leader. Like, being just a leader is now very uncommon. So I love what you're doing. I love what you're coaching and training people on. And I love the concept of an uncommon leader. I'm just so sad to hear It's just being a good leader is uncommon right now.
Right. Well, that's why they need consultants. That's why they need podcasts like this. Like the harvest, is short, but the laborers are short, but the harvest is wide open. We got all kind of land to win. You talk about kind of nice, and that went through my head about 10 minutes ago in terms of when we were talking, is that ultimately leaders who deliver truth, but they have truth that they're delivering, but they do it in a nice way. Nobody grows. Neither one of them grows.
Right.
If you can deliver truth and deliver it in a kind way, compassionate, caring for them, that's what you really need. Because they end up either bullying, and I think I remember seeing this a little bit inside your book, because if you want to be a bully as a leader, you can deliver all truth, and not have any compassion with individuals and get stuff done ultimately.
Yes.
But it's not sustainable. You touch on that's where the burnout starts to exist. And maybe this is a good lead into your other. You say there's a distinction between high performance and optimal performance.
Yes.
What is the distinguish? How do I distinguish those two?
Yeah, first off, so there's 4 levels of performance. There's lazy, unaware. That's unmo in the book. We talk about unmo in the book, the main character. Lazy, unaware. Below lazy and unaware is like no heartbeat. Does that make sense? Like you're in one of these 4 categories or you're not alive. Lazy, unaware, high potential, high performance, optimal performance. 4 levels of performance. What we have found is with our system, which is called truth-based transformation, which we'll jump back to that in a second. Truth-based transformation is something that it's how we do what we do. But because of that, we're able to get people from any of those 3 levels, lazy, unaware, high potential, high performance, ultimately to optimal performance without having to go to the next step. Does that make sense? Like you can actually make a leap. You wake up a lazy person, you take them from unaware to aware. They don't have to like practice as a hypo and then become a high performer. And then, no. Let's go get right to optimal performance. Here's what high performance is. High performance is high output, undetermined pace, meaning the pace is not necessary, and high output, unsustainable pace compared to others. And then optimal performance is high output, we don't sacrifice results, high output at a sustainable pace compared to oneself. Here's what happens. Status quo, we talked about this, is so low. So if you race a bunch of slow people and you win, in today's world, you'd be able to say you're fast, but logically, that's not accurate. You're just faster than the slow people. So maybe you're not as slow as them. Doesn't make you fast. But if you are going to compare yourself to your own ability, then we can talk about, are you becoming faster or are you not? The other thing is making sure you're at a sustainable pace. What you're doing, that can be right. If how you're doing it is wrong, you'll lose. The what is not all that matters. It is the what and it is the how combined to get you the results you want. We talk about being obedient in the walk we go. If you're not obedient in it, it doesn't matter how big of an opportunity it might be. Not every opportunity is obedience, but every chance of obedience is an opportunity. And we need to change our mind. We need to be obedient, not opportunistic. And if we can focus on that, and that is very uncommon, you will be able to lead people to do things you've never thought they would ever be willing to do because they know your heart, they know you care, and they understand that you are trying to do what's best for them. That is what people respond to. That's what people follow.
Okay. Uncommon leaders. Hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I believe in doing business with people you like and trust and not just a company name. That's why a strong personal brand is essential, whether you're an entrepreneur or a leader within a company. Brand Builders Group, the folks who have been helping me refine my own personal brand, are offering a free consultation call with one of their expert brand strategists. They'll help you identify your uniqueness, craft a compelling story, and develop a step-by-step plan to elevate your impact. So head on over to coachjohngallagher.com/BBG, as in Brand Builders Group, to schedule your free call and take the first step toward building a personal brand that gets you noticed for all the right reasons. That's coachjohngallagher.com/BBG. Now, let's get back to the episode. I look at that and I think about, again, the opportunity and obedience. The dichotomy of those two words is fascinating. Matt, you've mentioned your faith a couple different times.
Yeah.
You've also mentioned the life that your daughter is going through, that her mind is there, but her body does not contribute in the way that she would probably like and that you would like as well.
Yeah.
You and your wife, and this ought to be good too, based on how you are from the process, you co-founded the Take Part Foundation.
Yeah.
So now you get to work with your wife in a not-for-profit and talk about, all the things that she can do well and what you can do well.
Yeah.
But tell me, outside of that, Maybe you can talk about that experience and working with your wife in that organization. Mm-hmm. What is the Take Part Foundation? And tell me, what that means to you.
Let's talk about Maria first, because that's what's going to bring this in. Maria actually is the owner of LifePulse. I'm just a dancing puppet that goes on stage. It was her, remember, it was her idea of the business. She asked me, how do you do this? It just happened to go further than I think she thought it would. So when I called her after I had that meeting with the Fortune 100 company, I said, hey, heads up, you're the president of a new company. We got to figure out what we call it. So Maria and I have worked together in the for-profit world since the beginning of 2015, 16, 17, when we first met. We got started right away. Working in the nonprofit world, that's her space. Maria's smarter than me. She's more business savvy than me. She understands branding. She is the brains behind everything that works. I'm the bronze behind everything we try. Does that make sense? Yeah. So Take Part started because we found out that Natalie had this condition. And when the doctors came in, they said, hey, she needs to outlive science. I said, okay, that's interesting. Don't really like that answer, but whatever. And I said, but what are we going to do? They're like, no, there's nothing we can do. We don't even know. Her genetic mutation is so rare, 17th ever, that they don't even know what the gene does, let alone what we need to get it to start doing. So we're so far away from a solution that to them, she needs to outlive science, live long enough. And if you know our story, or you watch anything on our website, or you go to take-part.org, that's the website for the foundation, you'll see videos of Natalie's story. But I mean, we've done everything from, quick ER visits to, her dying and coming back 20 minutes later, pronounced dead and miraculously coming back perfectly fine and rolling out 12 hours later. I mean, it's just crazy, nothing less than God type experiences. So as we started this Take Part Foundation, I went to Maria and I said, hey, I think we should start a nonprofit. And she goes, absolutely not. She knows nonprofit. She's like, Matt, it's such a heavy burden. No. I was like, all right, fine. You know that world. I don't know that world. So I'll find a way to start it as a for-profit, and we just will have a no profit, right? We just won't have profit. And she's like, we're not doing that either. Let's just wait and pray on it, think on it, and let's see what happens. So, all right, I'm like, all right, so let's figure it out. And we went and she Googled and found one doctor in Australia who was doing research on Natalie's specific gene, which is crazy, right? Everyone talks about how bad social media it is. Well, social media is bad when we create it as an idol. When we use it as a tool, it's a blessing, right? That's almost like everything God offers us, right? When we cross it, AI, it's a great, exactly, right? So as we're navigating this and having this conversation, I start talking with this doctor and I said, what's the issue you're running into? She's like, well, we're running out of money, but you have too much to worry about. I don't want to burden you with trying to raise money for your daughter. I said, look, you don't understand. It's painful for me to do nothing. I'd rather try something and fail than not try and fail. But right now, there is no success as an option unless we try something. Failure is the only option. So I'd rather try and fail than do nothing and fail. And she looked at me and she started kind of getting teary-eyed. She's like, no one's ever said that. She's like, but I get that. I said, yeah, most parents would feel this way. I just happened to articulate it in a way that made sense to you. Most parents would feel this way. I said, how much do you need? She's like, well, we're about 20 or 30 away from shutting it down. I'm like, man, 20 or 30 million. That's more than I thought. That was kind of a deflation. And she goes, not million, thousand. I said, excuse me. I said, here's a credit card. I'm not joking. Do not stop. For $20,000, don't stop. Let me know what we need and I'll pay 26% for the rest of my life if I need to. Let's keep going. And she goes, all right, well, hold on. We're not doing that. But do you really think you could help us? I was like, I have no idea. I don't know anything about genetics. I don't know anything about medicine. I don't know anything about nonprofits, but I do know a thing or two about making money. So if it's about money, I can help. I don't know how, but I can help. I like telling people, I like asking people for money. Sales is fun for me. So let's see what we could do. I said, how much do you need? She said, about $250,000. I said, that's not a lot. We can do $250,000. Let me talk to some people. I reached out to a mentor of mine to ask for some guidance, also kind of guidance / do you want to donate? Right. To some people, that's a lot of money. To other people, they're like, yeah, here it comes. We'll pull it right out of the foundation.
Check.
And he goes, Matt, how common is rare? And I'm like, I don't know, man. That's not what are you doing? This is not what we're doing here, right? Do you want to give a check or not? He goes, no, look it up. I go, all right, I look it up. And as I look it up, there is 3 facts that I'll never be able to not see. Number one is in America, 1 out of every 10 American has a rare disease. And I was like, that's crazy. 30 million people have a rare disease. 300 million people live it. I was like, that can't be true. I was like, but if that's the case, then rare is more common than you think, which just so happens to be our tagline, right? That's where that came from. But the other ones that I saw was that 95% of these kids with rare conditions have no FDA approved treatment. Okay, so now there was really no hope for these kids either. And hope is a very big word in our life and in our faith walk. And then the other one was that 35% of them never make it past the age of 4 or 5, I'm sorry. And Natalie was 4 years old. And I go, hey, Maria, check these 3 things out real quick. And she was happy and angry at me at the same time, right? Because she's like, I get it. Let's start something. So we started this concept just to raise money. We're like, what do we call it? And Maria's like, you know what? Everyone always asks how they can help. And the problem is when you have a kid with an ultra rare disease like Natalie, there's not a lot you can do. So you can donate to larger organizations, but none of that money will ever come to Natalie. And it's not against the big organizations. It's just Natalie's so rare. Like when you look up rare diseases, Natalie's disease is not even there, right? So all that being said, as we're navigating that and figuring that out, we're trying to piece together what's the next thing to do. And Maria goes, we should call it Take Part, because everyone wants to take part. Here's how you can take part. So that's where Take Part came from. And I said, well, what are we taking part in? And she just brilliantly, without even like thinking, she goes, we're going to take part in the fight for possible. And that's what we do. There's 3 things that we do. We raise money to help with research, resources, and storytelling. So we'll do research, meaning, hey, if you have a rare condition and a doctor doing research, we will help fund that. We will do resources. One of the most specific ones that we've done, which has been so rewarding, is we will cover the cost of genetic testing that insurance won't cover. And then the third one is storytelling, where we will have an entire part of our page dedicated to what we call warriors, which are kids' profiles that have all their medical records on it, so that parents like me who don't care about the privacy of my kid as much as I care about the ability to get content over to different specialists all over the world, I don't have to wait for the doctors to get approval, because I found out that I, as a parent, own the right to those medical records, and I could share them as I'd like if I share them. But the doctors can't share them freely.
Right. Yep.
So those are the 3 things we do. That's what we do at Take Part. What's it like working with my wife? It's hard. It's very hard. She is a brilliant, strong, and confident woman. And when you have that Proverbs 30:31 woman, which I have, you have to ask yourself, are you willing to be a Proverbs 30 or 1 through 30 man? You see, we sit there wanting the 31, but we're not willing to be the 1 through 30.
Oh, that's so good.
So as we sit there and go, why can't you be more like her, to our wives? I say, read part of 31 where it talks about what her husband's doing. While she's doing all this stuff, her husband's sitting in the center court having conversations with the elders, meaning either he was an elder or he was at least respectable enough in the church community where the elders wanted to talk to him. So yeah, we all want a Proverbs 31. I'm blessed enough to have one. But in order to make sure we're experiencing the most of that and not being knuckleheads, and I'm not destroying her in that way, I got to make sure I'm a 1 through 30 man. And I fail all the time. I get angry. I get upset. I get short. I treat her as a business partner, not a spouse, right? And you're sitting there going, well, she is a business partner. Yeah, secondary. There's priorities to the ministry that we have to recognize. God first, wife second, kids, family, then you go outside. What I do sometimes when I'm out of alignment as an uncommon leader, what I do as a very common leader is I go, all right, God, I'm going to pray to you, and then I'm going to pray about all these clients, and because I'm going to go from God to work, it's going to provide for my family, so therefore I can justify my ambition, I can justify my lack of prioritization, because look how much money I'm making, and that's what we run into. Sorry, so that was a whole...
We rationalize that all the time. We rationalize that all the time, and I love bringing it all the way back into the man of faith that you are, and I know, regardless, you came to know Jesus later in your life as a result of, in essence, a desperation with regards to what was happening inside of your business. Craig Rochelle, great pastor who also has a leadership podcast, he says we change either out of inspiration or out of desperation. And clearly that was a desperation story. You go through that as a family. You're married, you have 3 kids. Your daughter has a rare genetic disease. Another opportunity, back to that word opportunity, to doubt and not have hope. And so, I'll kind of finish with this a little bit. I use the term Romans 8:28, all things happen for the good that God has provided for us. In this case, that would be, to me, if I'm owning that, and, as rare as that is, even as an uncommon leader, I'm saying, man, I find myself saying, I feel sorry for you. And then that's not what it is. How have you and or your wife maintained your growth in the relationship and your faith through this situation? How's it brought you closer to God?
Inspiration or desperation, right? This is desperation, which then leads to inspiration. But then in desperation, we come back to it. I'm amazed how many times we can experience a miracle of God, her coming back to life, business doing something, her doing something, whatever it might be, and then how quick we can forget and turn our back on what God just did. I mean, it's disgusting to me. So as much as we talk about, the Proverbs 31 wife, I always want to make sure I can also be a Psalm 51 man, right? And like David goes and repents and is able to turn from his way and feel conviction and go from conviction to correction and not fall trapped to condemnation. Like, how fast can I as a man do this? And when you have a daughter like this, I still get angry. I get angry at her. Like, I take out my anger on her because she needs something from me when I'm busy. Like, the silliness of it and the recognition of, we talked about Romans 8, which we'll dive into with struggle leading to endurance, but also in the, Romans 3 with just the depravity of us. Do we really recognize, like, man, I need him in so many ways? And we jump to John 15:5, where he says, apart from me, you could do nothing, not nothing big, nothing, no thing. Apart from me, you can do no thing. So all of that being said, he is our center. He is our foundation. He is our rock. Going into Psalm 1, we're the tree trying to anchor ourselves as close to the stream as possible. Abide in him and he will abide in us. Like, this is the stuff that you hear on Sunday school, that when you were put in the pressure cooker that we're in as a parent and a marriage unit that is doing the things we're doing, you can only rely on him. And it always works. Because that struggle does bring endurance, and that endurance does lead to hope. And hope is what we rely on, because when you understand what faith is, it's the belief in the hope, confidence in what is to come. And all of that is about understanding what is it that Jesus actually did on that cross. And when you recognize, like I said, not how do I understand who God is, but no. Who is God? God is good. Therefore, if God is good and God is all powerful, all things that happen, as long as God is the one who's doing them, are good. And therefore, anything that is opposing him is not good. So therefore, as we see things like evil in this world, I can confidently say, evil is not something that is created of God. Evil is the absence of God, right? And I could also, how do I make that argument? As I sit there and I've seen this argument made, it's not mine, I've heard it other places, but that, does darkness exist? Yes, we know darkness exists because we see it. But what is darkness? It's the absence of light. Does cold exist? Yes. How do we know? We felt it. Yeah, but what is it? It's the absence of heat. We don't measure temperature by coldness. We measure temperature by heat. So all this stuff being said, it just makes you realize God is good. That's where it starts. Everything else that happens goes through that filter, not Matt's filter. So my daughter's situation, is it good? Is it bad? It is perfect. It is perfect. Why does my daughter have this? Is because in chapter 3, sin entered the world. If that didn't happen, my daughter's situation would be different, but so would mine, and so would yours, right? Now, did sin of her or me cause that to happen? I can argue biblically no. However, in that situation, can I tell you how many people have come to Christ because they see my little daughter roll into a room? How many people come to Christ because they've seen her come back to life? How many people when she gets to heaven and she gets a reward for all the good that she has done? Because again, the thing I love about her is she'll randomly be like, Dad, I'm so glad I don't have to get judged by my actions to go to heaven because I sinned. I wouldn't make it. Thank God I'm judged by Jesus because he's perfect. And she just says things like that randomly. And that's because she is so connected to him. We've never had a concern of her faith, never had a concern of what she knows. But that does not mean that God's going to get her walking. We pray every single night for it. I'm hopefully excited about it. But it doesn't mean she's going to walk on this side of heaven, but she will walk eventually. We know that for sure. And if she goes to heaven before us, which is a very high likelihood, and she knows that, she's 8. We don't hide truth from our kids. She knows that. She's uncomfortably excited to go be in heaven because she knows the peace she'll experience being with God.
Paul talked about that as well. I mean, ultimately, he talked about that, it would be much better if he were in heaven. And yet, all the trial and tribulation that Paul went through, and you can walk through many of his books in terms of what he wrote, but that he knew while he was here, he needed to preach the gospel.
To double down on that, because we do a keynote that's called You're Not Done Yet, telling the story of when she died and came back, and going into Philippians where he talks about to live as Christ, to die as gain. And he says very clearly with what you're talking about is, if I'm here, it's for you, because I'd rather be there. And as an uncommon leader, right, as an uncommon leader, if you're here, there's something for you to do, not for yourself. The gifts that God have given you are not for you. The apple on the apple tree is not to be eaten by the apple. It's to be eaten by someone walking by. So like the fruit that God has given us, the gifts are to be given, not just pulled on. The gift that we receive from God is salvation through Christ. But every other thing that's given to us by God is to be given to us and then an outpouring of that to others. And that is when you get to experience that fulfilled life.
Man, I could talk about this and have fun talking about it for a long time. Because you mentioned John 15:5. That's my favorite book of the Bible. Ultimately, is John 15. I don't know if you're supposed to have favorite books or not, whatever that means.
No, you're good.
But it's like stay connected to him.
Amen.
We can do nothing without being connected, staying connected to the vine. So help the uncommon leader who's still on that journey as well. Even as you've gone through that, what are some of the ways that you stay connected to that vine ultimately as a man? And it could be disciplines as simple as going to church on Sunday, but there's probably something bigger.
Yeah. So what I would say is I'm going to put another resource on this page. It's called Who is God? It's a book we wrote, 60 days if you skip a day or two, right? 50 days if you want to go fast, but it goes through 3 books of the Bible to understand who is God. One of the biggest mistakes I find as leaders is we don't take a second to understand who it is we're working with, and then we're expecting to be able to get results or do things the right way. Just like with your workers, you need to know who they are. If you're going to serve something that is considered to be the almighty, all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good God, I would suggest to you to consider getting to know who this thing is, who this person is. And because of that, we walk you through 3 separate books. But in that, the one thing I would tell you is, you go to church every Sunday. And if you do that, congratulations, right? That doesn't necessarily mean you're a Christian. It doesn't mean you're saved at all. It just means you go to church. You're a church attendee. That's good. It just isn't all that's needed. My entire life changed when I made it a daily practice to read his word. And it was 20 minutes, start a timer, read. Don't try to finish a chapter a day. You're rushing through it. Only get what God wants you to get from it. 20 minutes a day, reading his word. I had a mentor who said to me, I will meet with you as long as you want, as long as you are in his word. I said, well, why is that? He said, because all I'm going to do is point you back to it. Like, that's what discipleship is. Discipleship is not let me walk you through and answer your questions. It's let me point you back to John 8, or Romans 8. Like, go there and learn about that. That's what I want you to focus on. And then let's talk after you read that. That's what true discipleship is. How do I know Jesus did that? He had the whole book memorized. He wrote it. In the beginning was the Word was God. The Word was with God. He knew it there. And then if that's the beginning of John, and if you go to the very end of John, it says, hey, these are just some of the things that were written about. Because if we were to write everything, it wouldn't fit on the earth. And when I read those 2 verses, it made me go, wait a minute, there's power in this word. I should probably pay attention to it. And then it came to me and it said, oh, wait a minute. These things were selected, meaning there was a purpose of why it's in here for us to read. The third part of it is I was given great advice as I was coming to know Jesus was, hey, read the Bible. And if you don't believe something, just mark it. And then let's talk about it, but keep reading. So if you're sitting there reading, you're like water to wine, right? His first miracle. What? I don't know if I believe that. What happens is a logical type A personality, you're going to dwell on that. And you won't be able to get past that. And what happens is I had to sit there and go, okay, water to wine, hold on, pause. I'm going to read this just to understand who this guy Jesus is. And whether he did or didn't do the water to wine doesn't take away the fact of who he was from a historical figure. Does that make sense? Now, then you get to the part where he starts calling himself God. You got to have a conversation of a moral concept. Is he a liar, lunatic, or the Lord? Whatever other, 3 ways that C.S. Lewis says it. There's multiple ways to say that, right? But the conversation was, okay, now let's talk about water to wine. And I brought that to a mentor and he said, hey, go with me on this. Because at that point, I didn't believe that Jesus was God. I knew God existed, right? I didn't think that this all happened out of nowhere, but I didn't think that Jesus was God. And he said, okay, so assume that part is accurate, that God is real and Jesus is God. So if Jesus was God, I go, okay, I can do that. He goes, if God created everything, do you think he could turn water to wine? And I went, yeah, okay. So what I realized was there was a fallacy in my logic that I didn't even realize, that I'm sitting here going, there is a God, but that God couldn't do this. Well, how the dude and everything happened? So I think he could turn water to wine. I think he could walk on water. I think he could create everything with his breath. I think he could tell clouds and storms to stop. I think he could heal people who can't walk. I think he could bring people back from the dead. This dude, Jesus, brought himself back from the dead. And that is the anchored truth that our religion and our faith is based on. Because if he didn't do that, as Paul says, everything we do is in vain. That being said, I would challenge anyone listening, and I'd be happy to be your punching bag. Bring the hardest questions you can. Poke holes through it. Do not blindly follow it. because every true Christian can confidently defend their faith with love and respect. But you have to be willing to ask questions. So if you're like, I don't want to offend anybody, I promise you won't offend a true Christian. Asking questions, investigating who Jesus is, you will never offend a true Christian. You might confuse them, you might stump them. And as a true Christian, if you're sitting there going, I don't want people to ask me questions, get comfortable saying, I don't know. Because I don't know is an okay part, because there's this element of uncertainty and unknown that needs to be there in order for faith to be there. If you were certain, there would be no need for faith. If there was proof, there would be no need for faith. So all that being said, is people ask, why are you doing this? Because I'm betting my entire eternity on this being true. Why? Not just because I went to church on Sunday, not even just because I read the book. It's because I've taken evidence, which is education, meaning knowledge, and experience. I've combined them to get evidence, and I've used that to make a conclusion. And I'm constantly looking for other evidence out there that can dispute what I have found. And in all of eternity, it seems as if there is not any evidence that can dispute the truth of the words in those 66-page books. So that's how I've come to that understanding.
Love that. Hey, listeners, he warned you at the start that he might say something that was going to offend you or make you uncomfortable. I love talking about uncomfortableness because if we are comfortable, we need to be uncomfortable about that. There's no doubt about it. We have got to continue to grow as leaders, and we only do that by challenging each other. And we only do that, as Christian brothers, by continuing to dive in the Word and recognizing back to kind and nice. Yeah. Matt, this has been phenomenal, honoring time and things like that, because we could continue to go on. Where do you want folks to go? What's the primary place you want them to go to learn more about you and to get in touch with you?
So go to lifepulseinc.com/uncommonleader. That'd be the first place to go. You can find us on Instagram, any of the major socials at LifePulse I'd love for you to follow us, as everybody would. And reach out directly. Like I said, we'd love to work with you, help you in any way. We have everything from one-on-one executive coaching to group coaching to DIY stuff, programs you could do online. We come into companies and do big form keynotes. We do big form training, company-wide training, you name it. We are doing an event in January 2026, January 22nd to 23rd, depending on when this is published. So I apologize if this is published late or early. I don't know how many spaces we will have left available, but if any interested in coming, go to Realign, REALIGNSTL, realignstl.com, and grab a spot if it's still available. We are bringing in executives, entrepreneurs, and professionals to come together to go through 2 days of training, which is a full month of coaching, and then giving a custom 90-day plan to get going and take action. So it is we call it a complete conference, where we're not sitting here going, hey, come on out there, we're going to sell you $1,000 upsell. No, you're good. You're going to pay for everything up front. You're going to take it, you're going to run with it, and you will leave with a customized plan, as well as access and connections to all the speakers and the attendees as well. So that's January 22nd, 23rd. If you can get there, be there. There's going to be an amazing amount of strong leaders that you will want to connect with, as well as amazing content. And we will take you through all the processes we just talked about. And you'll have access, actually, not just to the resources that we're putting here, but all the resources we have, the entire toolbox, over 100 different tools for those 90 days as you're going through your program. So that's how I would connect with us. And if you need anything, please let us know. We love having conversations. We love helping people and continuing to bring intentionality back to life.
Matt, so good. Thank you so much. I appreciate you showing up today, because you did. Whew.
Always.
What a lesson. That's great for you to be there. And hey, Uncommon Leaders, look, if you made it this far inside this conversation, I know that you know someone who needs to hear this message. You need to share it with them. You need to let them know. You need to write a review on this so that we can get this message in the hands of as many uncommon leaders as we can and continue to grow this community for many different reasons that exist. I would encourage you to go out and follow Matt and let him know that you appreciate how he shared today as well through connecting with him on social media. Until next time, champions, go and grow other leaders. Until next time, go and grow champions.